The first National X-Ball League divisional event of 2021 is just on the horizon. Don't miss the NXL Lone Star Amateur Open, going down Friday, March 19th to Sunday, March 21st at Giant Party Sports Paintball and Airsoft Park, just north of Dallas, Texas. The gunfights will rage across 2 different formats, 5-man and X-Ball, with 3 different levels of competition in each format. Make sure to register your team by Wednesday, March 10th, which is the final day to get your squad signed up for the battle. Also, tune in to watch all the action going down on center court, only on GoSports.com.
Welcome to Go Sports Live. I'm Matty Marshall. I got Mike Hinman here, San Diego Aftermath, legendary player from Aftershock and Dynasty from back in the day. He's bringing the team back, reinvigorating the Aftermath squads. We're going to dive into that, dive into his history. But first up, just mark your calendars. March 5th through the 7th, we got the Invitational going down out east. Looking forward to that. And then the start of the NXL season, March 19th through the 21st. So, Mike, let's jump into it, dude. First of all, I'm so happy that you're back. Paintball is always much more entertaining with Mike Hinman around, and it's been that way for a long time. Whether I was playing, with you out in the mountains of San Diego back in the day, or against you when you were on, Aftershock or Dynasty and or Aftermath, and then or watching you coach and lead the squad, and different incarnations over time. So, but now you're back. So let's just kind of start there. What was kind of the reason, that? What was, the fire lit underneath you to kind of take over Aftermath again? If we could just kind of start there. I do want to remind people of your legendary career that you had, but I feel like we got to start there. Like what has brought you back as a coach?
Well, I mean, I handed the team back to the players that earned the pro spot. Not many teams actually earn a pro spot and get into the pro division. And for me, with my factory, the company that I own, APX Paintball, it was really tough. When Alex Keys and I, my partner, were at events, things just never work the way they're supposed to back when it comes to manufacturing. You've got to have your hands around its throat, It really is. It's a grinded out business. It's not like, anybody's making 100% margins on whatever the product is they make. So, a couple of years back when we were in the hunt and in the fight to get that pro spot and our team achieved it, it was just taking a toll. And, I made the decision in the off season to step back, which you've got to think, to get to that peak, of earning that pro spot and then still have to step back kind of shows you the position we were in as a company. It was either sink or swim time. And naturally, I didn't want to fail at owning this business. I put a lot of money into it. So that was where I went. And the guys, Mike Mesa and I had talked on the phone, and Mesa's got to be probably one of the top most rostered Aftermath players ever. And he just had said, hey, we've talked with John Annucci. We're thinking about bringing him on to help with some of the things. And we would like to, keep the pro spot. It's, my pro spot, but they want to play in it. And it's like, well, yeah, you guys earned it. I mean, if they didn't want to do that, we would have completely folded it down and just handed it off to Mutiny because they were the next up in line that year in semi-pro to get it. But, I took a step back and focused on my business and just tough, I don't ever want to come off as negative or rude to any of the guys that were there the last 2 years. But, it just went in a direction that I wasn't overly comfortable with. It wasn't Aftermath, and I'm a pretty humble dude, and from my point of view, if I came on to run excessive when you were on the team, I understand what the motto was, what the aura was. If I was the coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, I would understand what to bring. I understand being the coach of the Ironman or Dynasty. Yeah. There's just a persona that comes with all these teams, and I assume that the Aftermath thing was somewhat self-explanatory what Aftermath meant. And over the 2 years, it just definitely got to a place that wasn't like in a million years I couldn't have imagined it would have got there. And again, that's not a thinly veiled shot at anybody. It just wasn't what I was comfortable with it being my name and part of my legacy, right? Like in this sport. And
Yeah.
legacy, I mean, talking to guys like Marcelo or Mouse or, I mean, Rainey, I mean, just the Damian Ryan still, it was like, man, what is happening with the team? And it's like, dude, I don't know, I went back to World Cup a year before and helped coach there, and just taking a look around. I mean, it's a tough league to build a team in. But before we get to that point, the team was in a good place when it was handed off. They went to Vegas, event one, year one, and we're a top 4 team, which is tough to do. I mean, nobody gets lucky in the NXL. You don't get lucky and make top 4 in the NXL, and you definitely don't ever get lucky and win an event in the NXL. So, they had a really good nucleus and core, and clearly egos and the way it was run. And, again, that's not all John. There's, John ran it his way and the guys wanted it a different way. And, it was the golden rule. The gold makes the rules. And, within 2 years, there was nobody left from that original team. So, I'd reached out to John, and John and I talked up until the end here quite frequently, about things. And it was like, man, we really need to get this thing going in a right direction. Like, I don't want to come back. I don't want to have to take this thing over. But like, we cannot be a 20th place team. Or if we're going to do that, just name it something else. And we could have done that 2 years ago, and I would have washed my hands of all of it. But, here we are 2 years later. World Cup comes and goes. It was a rough event for all the players, and I'm thankful for all the players that were there that played on that team and put their effort into it. But I mean, this is a kind of a, results-driven sport that we play in, and you're only as good as your last win. And if you ain't won lately, what good are you, And I really, I didn't see the heart and the fire. For me, I always say this, and this is going to come off a little tough, but like, I don't care where you come from, and I don't care what your beliefs are or any of that. I just want guys that are going to walk into a dive bar in Las Vegas with me, and if it pops off, aren't going to be the first ones running out the door. They're going to be the first ones standing shoulder to shoulder with you. Not that we're going looking for that issue, but you're just looking for gritty human beings, And there's a lot of gritty dudes that were on that team, but I just, man, the human spirit and will is pretty strong, right? If you have the will and the spirit not to just get dunked on, I believe, don't get me wrong, some of the great X Factor, Impact, Russians, the great teams that we have, Dynasty, those guys are tough, right? But there's a lot of other teams in there that we were losing to that, zeros were being posted. Man, as a coach, I can name like less than a hand all the zeros that have ever been posted against me. And they were happening frequently. And it just came to a point where, like in other sports, a change had to be made. And anytime there's a change made, quarterback traded, a coach removed, however you want to call it, it ruffles some feathers, and it's unfortunate it has to be that way, but the Aftermath motto has always been, like there's no politics, no BS, best man, best 5 play, period. And that's not where we were at.
I don't think that, there's a decent amount to kind of break down here. I totally agree with you. Anyone that's played on a team that's done well, it's incredibly frustrating to see that team, that name, that legacy not do well. It's so frustrating. It eats at you. And so, sure, you go out and have one bad performance. Okay, fine. 2 bad performances in a row. It happens. But after a certain amount of time, that's when you kind of start getting really, really frustrated. And if you're in a position to do something about that, then, I could totally see why you decided to wade back in here and take over again, just because, the story, like you had said. So you needed to go and, get things dialed in with your business. Totally understandable. Family. I remember talking to you at the time. And you were like, look, Matty, I got kids. I got this, I invested money into this company. This is going to work. I'm going to make it work. And I got to work my ass off to do that. And I love the game. I'll be back eventually, but this is just what I need to do. And this is the way it's going to go down. So, and then you did that. And then, but after enough time, it did, and because it started off so well, 3rd place in Vegas, and they looked great. Surprised a lot of people. And we've been asking that question ever since. What happened to Aftermath? How did they go from 3rd place? Like you said, you don't get lucky in the NXL. It's incredibly difficult, man. This ain't the lottery. This is the trenches. This is a really, really, really hard thing to do. And it's only gotten more and more difficult. And this is, as we kind of talk our way through this, I do want to ask about some of these other squads who you're going to try to make a run at eventually here. But it was frustrating to watch it from my view, watching up there. Because, I mean, how many times can I tell the same story? Oh, well, after this amazing performance in Vegas, 3rd place, looks like Aftermath, getting beat up again. It was really frustrating to see. And then, going into World Cup, I mean, I think there was a stretch of, 16 games in a row, I think they lost until they beat Infamous.
Yeah.
So it was, and then, so if you go back and you look at, again, why you did wade in here, and we pull up the results, just last year alone, Aftermath, again, starting out in 2019 with that 3rd place in Vegas, in 2020, only 2 events, but an 18th in Vegas, and then a 20th at World Cup. And if we just go to the most recent one at World Cup, got mercy ruled by Edmonton Impact. A very slight loss against PC Katana, but that's a team Aftermath should be beating. And then AC Dallas 7-1 there, and then a really close and a frustrating loss against Seattle Uprising. I'm sorry, this was 2019, and then in 2020 in Vegas, it was just a lot of frustration. An 8-10 loss to an 8-10. I mean, that's set a record for points scored against Level. Again, a team that that Aftermath on paper should be beating. Dynasty losing by 4 there. And then finally getting the win against Infamous. That was the one that kind of broke that drought, that win drought. But then again, that's in the past. But I can totally understand why you decided to kind of wade in here. It must have been frustrating tournament after tournament after tournament to see that slow decline.
I had gone to World Cup, was it 2019, the 4 matches you just named, and I was helping coach there. So some of that's on me as well. But as I looked around that pit, we did, Mike Mason and I had a pretty good blow up at the end of the 4th match where he was frustrated. I don't think it was so much at me, but at the team. And if you're the coach, naturally it's working its way back up the chain. And, Mike basically had said to me that I didn't have the heart for it anymore. And it's like, listen, man, my son's not Tom Brady, right? Like, I don't expect him to go out here and throw 60-yard strikes to Gronk and win Super Bowls. My son's just not that guy, right? My point is I'm sitting in the pit looking at some of these guys and they're just not pro level players. I'm sorry. It's going to come off tough and somebody's like, damn, but it's the truth. Like, these guys, if they all got cut from Aftermath at the end of the season, let's see how many get picked up. And let's see how many get picked up by top 10 teams. Because if you don't, the truth is you probably shouldn't have been there. And that goes for a lot of other guys in the league. And, an issue John ran into is John is a Midwest guy that John says he's going to do something. I believe he's going to do it. But when you have to mix that with these new players, millennial level players that think the world, there's guys that think they should get paid $50,000 a year to play 4 or 5 paintball tournaments. And those of us on the inside of this industry hear this number and it's like, fuck out of here. You know what I mean? Explain to me as a paint manufacturer why I need to give you paint. Explain why Lux or Eclipse or whoever, Force or whoever it is, needs to give you guns. They're and these people in the industry just don't get it. And I think John had a hard time with that because I think he really I know he put his best foot forward. And the players didn't give him the responses. They didn't match his level of buying paint, paying for all this, going to all these invitationals that they're doing. They just didn't match it. So, at some point, and I think he got too close to some of these guys. Listen, we're all friends. But when it comes to inside that pit, inside the net, we're not friends anymore. I'm the coach. I mean, it's a command and control structure or control, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm the boss. If it doesn't work, then I have to be replaced. And if you're not doing what I'm telling you, then you have to be replaced. And if we're going to believe that this is a professional sport, like, you have to do your job. It's completely counterproductive to not do what you're told. And that year at World Cup, and there was game plans that were laid out. There was things that were talked about, 3-hour team meetings. And you're sitting there the next day and you're like, what? Like, that was never talked about, bro. Like, and that's, again, I'm really not aiming that at any one player. It's the whole team. But, John then had to go into the next season, 2020, playing 2 events with a lot of the same guys. And, you watch guys want to leave because, and Matty, like, toxicity in a camp can really spread quickly. And it just takes 1 or 2 guys on that roster that are negative, as, I call them the whisperers, to just kind of implode a team, And you watch guys like Zach Hill. I talked to him this weekend. He's playing with AC Diesel now. Great team, great guys. They came down and played us a ton. And talking with him, it's like, super nice dude. I mean, not a negative bone in his body, I don't think. But just hearing his take on it, he's like, man, I really tried. And it's like, yeah, I appreciate you. Like, we needed more guys like that doing that. But when you hear that the team's out at whatever field and they show up late and there's only 3 guys and guys are hungover, this or that, like, that is just not the brand that we are putting on the field. Like, that's just not. I'm okay with the losing part, to be quite honest, if we're really giving it our 100%. But if we're not, like, that's where the frustration comes in.
Just the last thing I want to go over, because I think it speaks to the mental element of what is required at this level of the game to be successful, before we move on and talk about some more positive things. Because, yeah, again, that 3rd place and then in Vegas, and then it was just that steep decline and it just stayed at the bottom of the barrel. And then when you and I talked beginning of this year, I was like, well, what's your plan? Buddy, we've seen you've been around for a long time, lay it out for me. And you're like, Matty, step 0 is don't take 20th place. I'm putting a team out there that's not going to suck completely bad enough that we're going to get relegated, and I'm going to go from there. And the downest and best players are the guys that are going to be out there, and we'll see who ends up being an elite guy. And that's who I'm going to go with, which I think is a great plan. But so the last thing I wanted to cover was the 2020 World Cup, because it was, kind of telling. You get 4 chances in the prelims. The very first game was a very frustrating loss against Columbus Level, 6-4. Close game, though. But again, that's a team. If you're Aftermath and it's your first game, if you don't put a win up against Level at that particular point, then you're, oh, great. Here we go. Now it's only going to get worse for us. We got AC Dallas, Ironman, and Diesel next, and every single one of those games was a straight ass whooping, man. Like, AC Dallas beat the brakes off Aftermath 6-0. The Ironman beat the brakes off Aftermath 6-0, and then AC Diesel, 1 point was scored against Diesel. That was it. That was the end of World Cup. So after that really close loss, it was mental defeat and not much of a fight put up after that. And that is the opposite of what you want to see out there. So again, I understand after that was kind of straw that broke camel's back. All right, we've had enough. If Aftermath's going to be around, we're not going to be last place. So here you come in. Let's talk about some positive stuff here. Let's talk about the future. Because you can touch on the mental side of it and that result from 2020 if you want, or we can just, skate right in and start talking about some positive stuff, because I do like,
there's not a lot for me to say, right? I wasn't there, right? Like, I'm not, hindsight's always 2020, and we can always look back at something. I mean, Matty, we could look back at the lottery numbers that we should have played on the last go round, right? And you and I would be millionaires.
Oh, damn, I blew that.
But it's, again, and we talk about productivity and counterproductive. It's counterproductive for me to say what they should have done because I wasn't there, and I'm nothing more than a, guy sitting at home telling the quarterback what he should have done instead. Clearly there was a level of mental breakdown and defeat there, right? And I always say, a team that goes 1-1 or 0-2 the first day, they got a lot to prove the next day. And sometimes you even know, like, we probably aren't going to make Sunday with whatever our first day scores was, but somebody's going to feel me today. Like, I'm going to ruin somebody's day, And I can think back to 10-man games where you'd be in your last game, you knew you weren't making Sunday. The family walks up and says, "Hey, Mike, Pat, and those guys, maybe it was Disco Pete, you guys aren't going to make it in. So basically throw this game." And it's like negative Ghost Rider. Like, we're going to smash you. And we did, because that's just the mindset of those of us in the sport that are warriors, and clearly it had broken down. And again, I don't think it's the coaching staff there. I think the players had just gotten to a point where they had mentally checked out. So, it is what it is. And moving forward, it's a lesson to be learned for them as players, for me as an owner coach, for John, for every person involved. There's something good to be taken from it. Just a learning lesson.
So you come back in, things get sorted, got the team back. Who were your first calls to? How did that go down? You're going to rebuild here for the future. Maybe not first calls, but what was kind of your, lay the plan out for me a little bit here.
I don't think I called anybody. My phone been ringing. Like, I just, to be honest, like, I just 100% real. And you can ask all the guys that are on the team now. I'm not calling people. I'm not knocking their doors down. I mean, something any team coming into the pro division has to ask themselves is, are you going to break the bank and pay a bunch of dudes money to try to be your friends and get you a win? And that's the truth. I mean, we talk about some of the great coaches in this game, but if you take the checkbook away, how many of those teams would still exist? So for me, I didn't go making false promises or flying a flag that isn't who I am. Like, to be fair, Joe Barrett and those guys had already talked with John Annucci. Like, that, full credit to John on that. When, there was definitely some behind the scenes nonsense that went on with us getting the pro spot back, but it ended up happening. And Joe had already talked with them. And I believe Josh had already talked with them. And then from there, Tim was on Uprising. They were trying to get the band back together. And that was kind of a ready-made core that they already had. That, that maybe some of the guys from the teams they were on had ran their course. A couple years, people start getting tired of each other. And I think they were looking for a change. And they were looking for a change, whether it would have been Aftermath or Thunder or Iron Man or anywhere they could have gone. It would have probably been a change, would have been coming one way or another. So they had reached out, just said, "Hey, man, if we get the spot back, if John relinquishes it without some kind of a fight or whatever you want to call it, we'd love to take a look at you guys, And from there, I mean, guys like Unger were happy to come back because, Unger helped earn that spot, right? Johnny Greer was going to come back. I think, with work, he's a little busy. But a lot of those guys that help, even we talked with Mike Mesa, like, he helped earn that spot. So, those guys came back, but the rest of it, I'm not going to go knock on people's doors and try to coax them out of their little hiding holes to come play paintball. If you don't want to play paintball, don't play paintball. If you do, we're going to be playing a lot of paintball. And that's, there's a lot of pro teams, Matty, right now that haven't even practiced because budgets haven't been finalized. Sponsorship is a little in the gray area. Like, we just, and on top of that, even if they have sponsored, nobody's got like a 5 million ball deal or anything like that where they can afford to play a ton of paintball. Luckily, I happen to own my own factory, so
I was going to say, hey, this is when it pays to be on a team with the dude that owns his own paintball machines, making all those paintballs, making them nice, fresh paintballs. And then, that's definitely a blessing. But that was one of the things that you told me out the gate. You're like, "Look, dude, I'm going to put a team together. I don't know if we're going to make a run right away, but knowing my track record, you weren't boasting, but you do have a good track record." We were texting actually about this a little bit off camera before this weekend. It is hard to kind of recreate the lightning, to have lightning strike multiple times. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about that, but you do have an amazing track record. But the one thing that you said is we are going to play a ton of paintball. We'd even talked about a few players. I was like, "What do you think about this guy? What about this guy?" And you're like, "Look, I want guys that are going to be there on a regular basis, guys that will grind because we're going to play more paintball than everybody. And that eventually is going to pay dividends for us." Obviously that has always worked well for teams, guys that can grind the most with their guys together, doing drills, playing other teams, playing each other. Like you said, this is it's a difficult sport, but the magic of making that delicious sausage is made arguing on the field, getting shot a million times, getting up when it's cold, when it's hot, just going to the field and getting your grind on. Like that is really where your team gets polished. And I mean, pick your metaphor for it, but you definitely said that's what we're going to be doing. And I want guys that are willing to do that. I mean, this was, again, right after you took the team back. So, and then talk to me a little bit about that, because I do think that a lot of, people that are coming up, people that watch this, people that want to be great, I was kind of looking to glean little bits of information here or there, little things. Obviously, this is not rocket science. If you want to be good at something, do the thing you want to be good at and do it against the best players or the best people or with the best people or, whatever. Just, you need to be doing the thing you would like to be excellent at with excellent people. And the better they are, the better that you surround yourself, the talent you surround yourself with, the better you're going to be. But you've always been about that. Your team has always been in the grind. Talk to me a little bit about that.
I mean, yeah, it's just, for all of us that either own a team or coach a team in the pro division, so there's 20 of us and there's X amount of coaches. The question is how you take the blueprint and what's your flair on it, right? Like what's your secret to success, right? And for me, I was talking with Joey Blute yesterday, day before, and he was, Joey and I are always really straight to the point with each other. And he goes, the one thing I've always been good at, and I didn't really look at it like this, was finding new players and getting them into the pro division and having, like, the average age of my roster in the pro division is always super young. It's not, whereas in damage, I saw somebody put a picture up today from like the 2013 team that plus or minus, there's a couple minuses that just aren't playing and Rainey's not on the team, but it's the same team. Like it's the same core 8 years later. I mean, I can't even comprehend that, right? Like that's 8 years. I'm lucky to get 8 events out of some dudes. So for me, it's, just finding young guys that's the truth though, right? Like,
that's the truth. That's why I laugh. It's funny because it's true.
So for me, is this finding guys that first step want to be there, don't have the excuses on why they can't be there and why they want to play paintball every weekend. And, never in a million years did I, and, Matty, you can tell people, you always say there's stuff for consumption and not. I mean, with me, it's an open book. Like I said, I mean, I'm very humbled by the position I'm in, what I've got to go do. I mean, I don't think, you tell the people, I don't think there's ever been an air of arrogance about what I've said. Like, I'm very humbled. This is the toughest step to come into the pro division. Even if you have a solid team, semi-pro, like we won 3 events, we did this, we did that. Man, pro is a whole nother beast. And, my eyes are very open to it. I've been doing it for 25 years now or whatever. Like, I'm very aware of what awaits me out there, right? Like, it's fast and it's brutal. But and I'm lucky, right? Like Joe Barrett and all those guys, I never, until you've been a teammate with somebody, you don't really understand what somebody's about. Like, you talk to people, you see them walking by at the event, say what up, maybe practice somebody once. But, like, once somebody's on the team with you, you really learn what they're all about. And, Joe Barrett and these guys have really brought a different look to Aftermath and like their resolve and their, Jerry's the other coach on the team, Van Cleve. Like, we're not out having to go, the team 2-3 years ago, Jerry would be at LAX till 3:00 in the morning picking people up. This last weekend, bad weather, flights get canceled. Josh is coming out of Portland into LA or Orange County. His flight gets diverted or canceled and he goes to Palm Springs. Joe, Tim, and Austin Betty got in the car and drove to Palm Springs, picked him up Friday at, midnight or Saturday morning. When I woke up feeling fresh in the morning, they were just all at the Airbnb that is my house, and everybody was ready to go. So there was other guys on the team that are, picking up that slack, and we've gotten really lucky, I mean, even like Thomas Kim showing up, like, was just a lucky. I mean, there's other teams that wanted Thomas.
Yeah.
He's friends with these dudes.
Yeah.
And we had a really straightforward talk. Like, I'm not, if you think there's some big number for you out there, bro, get it. Like, buy me dinner and we'll call it a day. Austin Betty, he gets released from Diesel because, he's an out-of-town guy. They have so many guys back home with the AC, whatever you want to call it, implosion, rebuild, that he, Mark's got his own team out there and a great team. I mean, they played lights out this weekend. So for me, all these pieces have kind of fallen into place. And I'll get a lot of credit for it, but really it's as much credit goes to the players that have seen the vision and, my words have struck a tune with them and they're believing in it, So for me, that's kind of where it is and the build. And luckily, like Troy, that was from the DMG semi-pro team, he moved Bakersfield, got a franchise business there that he's been working his backside off to make it, build his life, build his business. But he shows up at one of the academy days, which the academy out here is just a place for everybody to show up and play paintball. No politics, no industry, just show up and ball out. Like if you're on a GI team and I'm APX, like let's go play paintball together. Because getting back to the roots is really important to me. And he shows up and it's like, man, who's that guy in the tiger stripe? He's wearing like a tiger stripe top, some DMG stuff on, and it's like, that's Troy, And dude played out of his mind. Really, he's a grown man. So we've just gotten a lot of these random pieces that have floated back in, and hopefully they stick out the season. And I think our roster's sitting around 11 right now. It's pretty heavy. I don't think we would play that many going into the event.
No, I just want to, because you mentioned a lot of guys. I just kind of want to hit on a couple bullet points here, just so people can wrap their heads around it, because it's a pretty deep roster, which I know you're not going to take that many guys. I mean, you might take 10. Who knows? Maybe you'll want to roll super deep, and then just let the best rise up. But I do think, Thomas, let's start with Thomas Kim. He was one of those guys that you and I were talking about before the season began. Big fan of Thomas Kim. I watched him overseas when he first started to become, I felt like a huge puzzle piece to any team he seemed to be on, because of the way he was looking at the game. He also was like coaching squads. He was coaching on the field with DMG, calling plays, and then goes to the Ironman. And I kind of talked to him a little bit. Still really young guy. His mom just passed away. He's getting his life together, working on the family business. He just got a lot of stuff going on, but I really like the head that Thomas Kim has on his shoulders. And I really like the way he plays the game. He plays a versatile game. I think that's a huge pickup for you. Because he can kind of do a lot for your squad. Let's talk about Thomas Kim a little bit more before we move on, because I think that, when you start, people talk about, oh, this team looks good or that team looks good. It comes down to players and position. Obviously leadership is huge. You got to set where are we going? Where are we going with this? What are we doing today? What are we trying to achieve? And what is our mentality going to be as we try to achieve this thing we're trying to accomplish in the microcosm of a practice or, this meeting? That's massive. But having a guy like Thomas Kim, I think is going to be good to create that fertile ground, because he kind of is already a guy that's been a leader on a lot of squads. So let's talk about Thomas real quick before we move on.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're lucky to have Thomas out there. I mean, I've seen Thomas play. Again, I've never stood shoulder to shoulder with the man in the pit and listened to his take on things, but I mean, he came out this last weekend. I mean, he's committed to playing with the team, best of all of our knowledge. Joe and them are obviously really good friends with him. Said he's going to be there for the year. I mean, he came out and fit in like an old pair of sneakers, right? Like the guy really fit together with everybody. He didn't play one spot. I think Diesel and us played 80 or 90 points this weekend. It was a long weekend, and he played everywhere. The one on the D, 2 over on the snake side, the 3, it was a field that you could have some guys in a 3 spot, working cross field, and he played everywhere. And no negativity, super positive dude. Had some really big points. Those ones where you come down to a 3-on-3, and I always say it on the sidelines. I'm like, the next guy that gets shot probably cost his team the game, because the 3-on-3, and you're not mirrored up, but you're like, man, this is. And Thomas would pull a shot out, and you're like, wow, way to be, man. You keep adding those up, you get enough guys that can do that, you're going to start winning a lot of games. So, and I'm not saying we're there yet, but it's a very listen, Diesel's a great team. Adding BJ, I mean, the guy he's got killer eyes, right? Like the guy is intense, right? Like he's out big there. Fan. And that was a guy that obviously Matty in the offseason, we had talked just about players in general, not just Aftermath, just up and coming players. BJ and he's just a great dude too, right? The whole team was great dudes. There was no nonsense this weekend. But when you're out there watching like a team where you're like, man, there's really not a guy out there that we can pick on that's super weak. Or, this guy's in the back center. Hey, our snake guys can run free because he's a little soft back there. Like it was a really good team. And I mean, Thomas held his own, so super stoked to have him. I mean, a very positive human being. That's what you need to have, like the last Aftermath team, and I'm not going to get too deep into it. It's just really the team that I was in charge of and I was in control of with Jerry Van Cleve. We're both in control of it. We're both head coaches on the team. I mean, it just was a really negative, and it gotten really negative, and nobody really ever sets out to make it like that. But you just end up in, Matty, you were on Excessive, right? Like, not that it was bad, but you just get these weird angles that start coming off. You're like, where did that even come from? Like, why does it have to be like this? And thus far, we've had 2 or 3 big practices. And, none of these guys are playing into that. Like, and I think if anybody tries to go down that road, Joe, all 4 of those DMG guys, the NorCal guys, are just different breed of human being that just really aren't buying into all that. And, Thomas is a huge piece. I mean, Josh Hallberg, dude, that guy doesn't get enough credit. I watched his first ball. And, sometimes you're about to lose the point and you watch a guy make a move where the first ball out of his gun just crushes somebody. And you're like, wow, that was athletic, man. Like, there's a reason they call him Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
And it's not because of his nationality. It's because, like, the dude really is a monster out there. Joe Barrett, like, it's amazing. That guy was on the free agent market. Like, Joe is, everybody out here on the Aftermath squad will tell you, like, Joe's the captain of the team. He really is a leader. Mouse was sitting with my son on the next field over doing drills. And Mouse told my son, he goes, Joe's going to be really good on this team. And it wasn't, he's just watching him out there playing like he's playing with a fire in his belly. And we're just really lucky to have all these dudes, because without it, and I've said to a lot of people off air or off the record, like, it would be a really rough season for the rest of the guys having to get their feet wet in the pro division without some veteran leadership in there. It would be rough.
Well, you have, like, you're definitely getting the bet. Well, first of all, yeah, dude, everything gets a little twisted when time and, once the water starts flowing through the valley, the twists and turns present themselves. So yeah, there's a little bit of a honeymoon period right now. And obviously, look, dude, no one's trying to get screamed at by you, because everyone respects you. They know that you've run very tight ships in the past. And so they're going to be on their best behavior. Now, that's something you're obviously going to have to keep those screws tightened. But you did pick up a lot of guys they are already tightened up. These are guys that have quite a bit of seasoning on them. I mean, you're talking about dudes that took their licks the right way, coming up the ranks, and are starting to look really good out there. I mean, Barrett's been around. Hallberg has put his time in. Thomas Kim is outstanding. Brusselback can be an elite threat on his best days. I mean, you definitely are. You're getting some guys kind of reaching their, I don't know if it's their prime, because I don't know how far they have yet to get to, but it's going to be a very fun squad to watch. And then you got some guys, ready to prove themselves too. Who do you really feel as far as your threats? Unger, same sort of thing there. I feel like you have some guys that are trying to prove themselves. They want to be elite threats, and they have to go out there and prove that to themselves, to the league, to you, to their teammates, because they are those elite threats on their best days. It's just, is today going to be their best day? So what consistency are we going to get from your offense? I feel like that's the biggest question with Aftermath right now. Would you agree, disagree? Because I feel like the 3-on-3 situation, right? The depth on the attack. That's what I'm worried about for you guys. I'm not worried about off the break shots, not worried about 3-on-3s. Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm not, like, when I look at your roster and what I've seen them do, like, I'm not even really worried deeply about the attack. The attack will be there. It's just that, as you well know, you are trying to build a winning team. If you want to get deep on Sunday constantly and be that omnipresent force fighting to be one of the best teams on planet Earth, you need elite attackers, and they need to be elite on a regular basis, and you need to have multiple ones, because you never know. It's hard there at the top. So, Mouse is elite. He's amazing. Now, does he go off every single point, every single game? No, he doesn't. Nobody does. This is like kind of like baseball, dude. If you can hit the ball 3 times out of 10, you're in the Hall of Fame. That's how hard baseball is. Paintball is also really difficult. If you can go out there and stunt and get a 2 or 3 pack 3 times out of 10, you're also going to be a Hall of Fame paintball player. But who is going to pick it up the other times when you get shot? So that's my question. It's because I'm not worried about you guys. 3-on-3, I feel like field awareness, off the break shots, the leaderships. I feel like a lot of guys are emerging into the that middle part of their career. I feel like that's all dialed in for you guys. To me, the question is who's going to be your constant elite threats? Is Brusselback ready to be that guy? Is Unger ready to be that guy? Who's going to be on the D side? Like that's what I'm want to see when the balls start flying in anger come the first event when we got tournament paint, tournament refs, tournament pressure. I feel like you guys are going to be good at a lot of things. And I'm not saying you're not going to be good at that, but I just want to throw that to you and get some response to that. What do you think?
Well, first off, there's nobody on the roster that's not earned a spot to be on that roster. Because trust me, we have a second squad, a D2 level squad, but it's filled with young kids that their goal is to someday either fill up to our spot or hopefully be able to earn their own pro spot. That's a lofty goal. But we have a lot of young guys. If there was anybody on that roster right now, 1 through 11, that didn't deserve to be there, they wouldn't be there. Simple as that. I mean, I can name every other guy. Alex Keys has played with Aftermath a lot. I mean, he's going to be somewhat, if the field dictates his body size, I mean, talking with Tim and the guys, I mean, he was one of the top 6-7 guys this weekend. Troy is an attacker, short, fast, center, Dorito side, whatever he needs to go play. I mean, he just smiles and says, okay, and brings it, like if something up in the center needs to be traded out, he's got it. Pinky that came from Mutiny has been out here for a long time. Robert Ruiz has played very well. Joe and those guys have a lot of faith in him right now. And, there's a lot of positive momentum on him. Beyond that, David Ramirez has also come from the Mutiny camp. He's got a lot of experience in semi-pro. I mean, we all have faith in him doing his job. Austin came out this weekend. We brought him onto the squad. I mean, and kind of like how you said earlier about on it, like guys, it's new, the honeymoon phase. Yeah. I mean, it is a honeymoon phase, but there's a couple other sister wives here that are looking to take your job. You know what I mean? And there's 11 guys. It's not like we're carrying. Yeah. It's not like we're carrying 8 guys, and at the worst, just don't show up to practice and you'll be number 8. There's 11 guys, and probably only 8 or 9 will suit out at the event. And maybe some guys aren't going to like that, and they're going to go to other teams, and I'm totally okay with that. Because every weekend, guys know 1 through 11 where they sit. I mean, I looked at a guy this weekend and told him, you're sitting number 11, 10, 9, 8, right on down the list. So, I think we have the ability. Austin Betty came over, another great paintball player. Like, is he a 2? Is he a 3? He's tall, right? He's not a small kid. He had some rough luck, collapsed a lung before World Cup. And didn't get to get in there, but a couple times this weekend he made some moves. And Mark, Johnson being a funny dude, he goes, man, where was that at when you were on our team? So he's out there, and I mean, there's a fire under these guys, and I think they know. I mean, it's really simple. Either you step up or you step out around here. So I think that's something I've done well on managing, right? Like I don't know if I've been the greatest pro coach ever, but I think I've done a good job on getting the college kids ready to take the step into the NFL. And I mean, the list of guys that I put into the league is second to none.
Is elite.
I mean, it's a fact, right?
Yeah.
There's a ton of them. And now for us, finding these young guys and keeping them together. And Mike Paxton said this when I was coaching the Ironman, it's not a 1-year commitment. It's a 2-year deal, right? Because it's going to take you a year to get to know each other and then show up next year this time at these off-season practices and already know each other's quirks and ups and downs and whatever your issues are. Joe likes avocados or whatever weird shit you got going on. And like being able to like know somebody already. And now let's get to the finer part of the offense and really refine it. So it's a long process, I mean, you want instant gratification. It's the sport, right? You want wins now. Nobody wants to, as Charger fans, we never want to be in a rebuilding season, right? But yeah, but it's been there, and I mean, it would be very dishonest to not say that we're in a rebuilding situation. We're rebuilding a whole core of a team, because that's what had to be done. It's not like the Midwest guys; none of them really wanted to fly in every weekend or every other weekend to play paintball. So we had to build something more out here that was just. I mean, look at Impact right now; they're struggling to get their Canadian guys over the border because of COVID. Travel restrictions, stuff like that. They have practice up in Dave's Field this weekend. The Canadian guys can't come down because if they do, they got to go sit in quarantine for 14 days. It's just difficult, right? And that's across America. I've got kids, a wife. I don't want, people going through the airport, having to come into my house, possibly have COVID, right? It's a legitimate issue. So for us, we're in a rebuild. And now the question is, how quick can we get into Sunday? How quick can we get into that next level? That's acceptable, I mean, first we got to win a point in a match and put all the rest of it together.
I just think you got a no bullshit look at this right now, which I totally respect. And I love that. That's one of the things we always love about you though, Mike. But I do got to ask, just because of the coaching style, everyone's got a different coaching style. And I would not be doing my due diligence if I did not ask you about your coaching style. Now, growing up playing baseball, playing football, and having pretty ruthless coaches, and then, having Rich Telfer be my captain and coach, and, just I kind of being in the Ironman camp with a bunch of old salty dudes that didn't give a shit. I kind of always liked the way that you would be super hardcore with your guys, especially when you're taking guys that aren't at that level and trying to bring them up to a level, and knowing you have to go through guys, like knowing that, look, there's 11 of you here and it's 2021. Okay, well, in 2 years when we're hoisting the World Cup trophy, there's a good chance that half of you won't be here. I mean, that's the truth. That is just the truth. Maybe they all will be, maybe they will. That would be awesome. But in reality, that's typically not how it works, so, but the fact that you watching it many times at how you've gone about cultivating, like you said, those college kids to get them to go pro and bringing the best out of them, because what is going to happen, this is the question I'm asking you, has it changed at all for you? Do you look at differently than you did before? Do you want to be more ruthless, less ruthless, just more what? Just talk to me about the Mike Hinman style of coaching, because it has definitely been very successful in taking talented individuals and making them not just better paintball players, but harder souls too. Somebody that's willing and able to take mental beatings and be better.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've grown up, right? I mean, Matty, we're both 40 plus years old now.
Old.
And we were once this
old. Look at the gray beard.
Young teenage kids.
Look at the gray beard.
Playing paintball and having fun. And I've had to grow up a lot, right? I'll be the first to admit it. I think it's often misconstrued what people see, or you see a video of me yelling at A-Rod at an impact practice. What you didn't see was the 10 times before that I told the player, don't do that. I hear what you're saying. I'm just telling you that shot that you think you have right here is not there. Please don't do that. And I mean, how many times would a coach tell his quarterback, don't throw into cover 2 and get picked before he's just yo, bro, hit the bench. Number 2, come on in. And that's what it is. And to ask the coaching style, I mean, I don't think I ever set out I'm going to yell at 3 guys today. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. That's not really how it works, But this weekend, we're talking about Diesel, right? We're bouncing him here or there or whatever. And one of the points, end of the day, I totally could have just thrown my shit in the car, 2-3 points left, call it a day. We shoot 2 guys on the break. We have control of the snake side. And Tim Brusselbeck takes his gun down and is talking cross field instead of holding the lane and working a guy across. And, I gave Tim an earful. And it's not that I don't respect him. It's not that I don't think Tim's a great player. My job, listen, these guys already know 97% of what they need to know. Most of the true pro players out here already know what they need to know. I have to say it, and I'm not saying I'm Phil Jackson, but how do you think Phil Jackson went into coaching Michael Jordan or Kobe? Or how do you think you deal with Tom Brady? These guys are already elite, great players. It's how can I get just incrementally more out of them and become a better player? Joe and all these guys, we just want critiquing. We want to hear, you guys are all great paintball players, man. But how can we be better? Always. And I've said it before, and I've won championships with Dynasty. We enjoyed that night. We ate dinner at Charlie's, and then the next morning I was right back to film or breaking down and figuring out how to make our team better, because that's just how we do it. So, I mean, I'm sure you're going to hear some sound bites. I'm sure of it, right? Come on, everybody out there knows there's going to be something that's said and it's going to catch me a certain way, and it's going to be really? Come for a battle of wits.
You got to be yourself, brother.
But
you got to be yourself, brother.
But I mean, there's a better way to do things. This day and age, and again, a lot of these guys that we have, I think, can take and somebody getting in their helmet. But I've seen players just completely check out mentally. And I think that happened with the last Aftermath team from this last 2 years. You guys couldn't handle how John came across. Right, wrong, or indifferent, they just could not handle it. And that probably because they're soft-souled human beings. You know, they just really can't handle being told that they did something wrong. And for me, I don't plan on really changing that, but I can also look back. I mean, Todd, both of our great friends, right? Like you talk to Todd. Todd's a different coach today than he was 5 years ago. So am I going to be a different coach coming back? Yeah, time away from the game is always great for a coach. Like when you step back and you look at it and you're like, again, I would have done this. Maybe we should have done that. I look back at my old videotape from events that I've coached 2 years ago when I was there, watching all of those games. And I've replayed that tape 100 times on Go Sports, breaking it down. So for me, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things we can do better, but is there still going to be a passion? Dude, I could go to anger management or this or that, a psychologist all day long, and it probably wouldn't change who I am, right? Like I'm a pretty intense dude.
Yeah.
And it's just that, but also learning, and some guys, like I said, for me, 2 years ago at World Cup, where I'm not going to raise my voice at anybody. You're not at that level. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. And I'm not going to go out and, break down some 7-year-old kid that can't hit a 60-yard go route in the NFL. Like he's a little kid. He can't do that. You have my expectations on what some of these guys are going to do. But yeah, man, I also think stepping back again with that last team, and there was a lot of negativity that I personally had allowed to let happen. And that just in hindsight, you look back at it, it's that cancer, right? And you get cancers on the team, and sometimes you don't think they're that bad because it's not, this cancer or that cancer. No, it'll all kill you dead. And it's really that serious. You get, the whispers. You look in the back of the pit and there's somebody back there not happy because they're not on the field. I mean, that's the quickest way for me to get you on a one-way flight home. I'll pay for that one. Let's get you out of here. You know what I mean? You don't want to be here. You're going to be negative. You're not helping to fill pods or wipe hits off. Like, bounce out. So, that's kind of my mindset going into it. And I hope, you never want to focus on the negative. I hope everybody steps up to it. But if they don't, I mean, it's funny, like watching guys from other camps come in and, we have a lot of guys, or maybe we don't need this guy. And it's like, listen, man, all you need to worry about, Matty, is being top 5. Because that means you're going to start the event. And if you're number 6, 7, or 8, you're probably going to play 2. And if you're 9, 10, or 11, by definition, you're probably not going to be playing much unless it's 120 degrees out and we have to go super deep because guys are falling out. But guys will know exactly where they sit. And either you deal with it or you don't deal with it. That's on you, man. You have everybody's got a chance. Everybody's got a spot on the roster, including you, Matty. You just got to go earn it. And if you're not willing to go earn it, and you want something,
I'll be there
given
next
for
weekend.
free, yeah, come on down.
Probably not.
Yeah.
No, I think that. Look, I love coaches that give a shit. I love coaches that are passionate. I love coaches that believe in their players and want to see the best out of their players and aren't, willing to hold their tongues in those very visceral and important situations. I had a baseball coach back in the day. I've told the story before, but I haven't told it in a while. I don't think, but this is JV baseball, man. I think we're freshmen. Davey Williamson was on the team, I think, at the time. I can't remember exactly, but it was a while ago. But I remember the moment because we were losing to a team that we should not be losing to. We were down 8 runs. Our coach literally went in and he threw all of our bags out of the dugout, like threw them onto the field. He made a whole scene. He was just losing his mind. And he's like, I can't believe we're losing to this shit ass team. This is ridiculous. You guys are embarrassing yourselves. You're not even embarrassing me. You're embarrassing me. And the umpire is looking at him like, he's like, Coach, I need a batter. And he looks at us and he's like, does anyone want to get up here and hit? And every single one of us was motivated because we were embarrassed. One, to be losing that bad to a team we should be beating, by the whole display, by him shitting on us that hard. The whole thing was embarrassing. But because he challenged us, he's like, does anyone want to get up here and hit against this pitcher? Like, who's actually going to perform today? So all of us were like, yeah, I want to go. And so, then we ended up winning that game. Down 8 runs, we ended up winning that game. I think it was in like the 3rd inning or something. We were getting our asses whooped to start out with, but that motivated us. And he was like that as a football coach. He was like that as a baseball coach. I've always been a sucker for passionate coaches. So when I saw how you guided a lot of these younger guys, to get to bring the best out in them. Even when you're not there, you're still there because you were there in the formative moments of them cutting their teeth to become their best selves. And some of those dudes are using their best selves to make money, and to play the game that they love and to get a little bit of coin in their pockets and move forward in the world. I think it's a really cool thing. So, to all those coaches out there that are super passionate and maybe your guys can't take it, maybe you need to tone it down a little bit, but maybe you don't. You got to play it as it lies type situation, depending on that human soul that you're dealing with. Because some guys, like the Nicky Cubas of the world, you can yell at those dudes till the cows come home and they're just going to get better. But you may have a guy over here that's not that way. And you gotta kind of, bring him in a little bit, give him a nice, solid talking to, tell him you believe in him, and then yell him a little bit and then tell him he's awesome. What type of sandwich are we? Are we negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive? Everyone is coached a little bit differently, but I love your passion, Mike. I think it's awesome. And I can't wait to see you back out there, with your squad. And I love the squad that you've put out there. It's a lot of guys that are grown men, guys that have, that's not their first time here. This is not their first tournament. This is not their first pro season, and guys that are all real hungry to still prove themselves. So that's a good mix. And I know you're not scared as things move forward to grab a guy here, grab a guy there, because like I said, the chances of you taking your same 11 guys you have right now, and if you're hoisting that World Cup trophy, whenever it may be, is it going to be the same 11 guys? Probably not. It very rarely is. But you're all, like you said, you're about you're like, all right, you guys are starting, you guys are not, but you're going to play a lot, and you guys need to get better. So I think that's a good mix, man. I really am excited to see what happens to San Diego Aftermath this year. And I would put, and I am a betting man. So if anyone wants to bet me that you guys aren't going to take bottom 5, I'll bet that person. So bring it, anyone that wants to take that bet. Before I let you go, though, just a couple questions I want to throw at you. We don't got to go too long because I've already kept you for quite a bit. But I want to ask about Diesel. You played Diesel. I think Diesel's a dark horse for me this year. I look at, picking up BJ, I think was big. I like the squad that Mark has put out there. Mark is a great leader. Mark is a great human being. Congrats on your wedding, Mark. And that whole team, I think, is primed for potential greatness. I don't know when it's going to happen, but if he can keep that team together and if they can keep this focus as they are, they had a great showing at World Cup. But you guys just played them a ton of points. So I want to ask you about Diesel. And there's a couple other teams I want to ask you about too, but I'm going to start with Diesel.
Totally. Yeah, man, we had a great weekend with them. Sunday was supposed to be a shorter day because they had some flights getting home. As we all know, Texas has been inundated with horrible weather, and a lot of their Sunday flights were canceled. So suddenly Sunday became a 8 o'clock to 4:30 day. I believe Fran from Victory said I needed to pay him overtime because he was there so late. We played 90 points, I want to say, something like that, 80, 90 points. I was back and forth all day. Again, as a coach, we're playing layouts in the off season that we're not going to normally play. And for me, I'm not going to be down there every point hands-on telling guys what to do because I need to see who can sink or swim in this, who can step onto a field layout first weekend, pick it up by Sunday, understand what we're doing. Don't get me wrong, when the NXL layouts come out, we're going to have 2 weekends, 3-day practices, the whole 9 yards. But who can pick it up? And sitting there watching Diesel, it was like, what do we do? Heavy guns? Do we do a 7-point set of heavy guns, exploring the center, crazy 50-yard line runs, stuff like that? And there was nothing in their game plan that was soft to me. There was nothing where it was like, yeah, that guy's not watching back into the Dorito side. We could probably run a guy on a, delayed play into the 50 or something like that. They were just a very well-rounded team. Nobody got after each other. There was no negativity. Guys were really positive. You got, a bunch of dudes like Ben Challenger out there that generally, I think, enjoy playing paintball. BJ was big for him. Listen, BJ's name was bounced around paintball a lot in the offseason. Teams that he should go to, teams that should look at him, teams passed on him. I know some of the names. I know some of the inner workings of it. I think a lot of people slept on that dude. Again, that's when Mark said that, they were going after BJ. I can speak for myself. Guys like Joey Blute, that was hands off. We weren't going to go after or even pick up the phone and call because it's not our way of doing things. But I think, listen, man, BJ I always say it, right? Like Ryan Greenspan, our good friend. If Ryan didn't play for Dynasty anymore, 19 teams would call him tomorrow. So second you release it, 19 teams would call. There'd be a call coming in from Russia. Like everybody would call and ask him to play. And
Everyone would call him. Everybody.
Everyone would. And I think in regards to BJ, you know, like that guy's a lot of people fucked up, man. Like they really should have taken a look at that dude because he's, and again, good dude, talking to him, very intelligent. You see me over maybe getting in one of my guys' helmets, you know, about like, we should have done this, we should have done that. And I don't think BJ's sitting there watching out of disapproval. He's there to soak up the game and to try to understand. He's stealing reps, right? I always call it stealing football talk, stealing reps. If you're not in there, you're watching what the coach is yelling at your other defensive linemen or offensive linemen for, because you don't want to make that mistake. And you see a lot of guys that'll be on the sideline talking, Facebook, Instagram, bullshitting, where like BJ and those dudes are standing, like load up, however many pods, standing on the field, absorbing every bit they can get. So they were a great team, man. I mean, I agree with the idea that they're a dark horse team, but man, I don't know how anybody could really put them as a dark horse team at this point. I think they're a legitimate Sunday team. And then at that point, you know, you get into Sunday and who do you catch? And we've seen it, right? You, Matty, you sit up there every time and you watch these brackets come down. And there'll be a bracket where it's like impact, damage, and then the winner of that plays the Russians in Dynasty, and you're like, holy shit! Like that's like the final four. If whoever gets through that side of the bracket probably wins this thing, because you see the other side of it where a 1-3, 2-2 normal team had a good event, stunned somebody, and made it in, and you're like, well, Revo's first game is going to be cake because, and I see it back home. I'm like, you know, 3 hours ahead. Sometimes I don't catch the first games, and I'm like, win, win, win. These are my wins that are going to come out of it. And you're like, yeah, you know, Revo just pounded these poor guys or whoever it is. And I don't know how Diesel can not be a Sunday team. And at that point, if they catch a good draw or are playing well and can play their hot hand, Diesel legitimately could be a top 4 team. And then at that point, you know, the paintball gods got a smile on everybody once in a while, right? Like sometimes there's a little luck, a lot of skill that goes into making a win.
Yeah.
But
you have to be both. You have to be, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Those dudes were a class act out here. They practiced hard. There was no BS. You know, there's some teams you just don't want to practice. They just don't practice well. They cheat. They're, you know, want to get into fights, shit like that. Man, those dudes were a class act. Like not big about leaving California. It's 70 degrees and sunny out here, not a cloud in the sky. But I would definitely fly to wherever they're at to play paintball, because Diesel is a great team and just a great organization, period. You know, their wives and girlfriends are there. I mean, it was Valentine's Day on Sunday, but, you know, it was just a great group of guys. So I think as long, like you said, I mean, the question, and I don't see any reason Mark shouldn't, he can keep that team together. The longer they stay together, the better they will get.
They have a good mix of guys that are a little older and a little younger. They have that, you know, can people say, again, because you and I could talk about this forever. I'm trying to find a succinct way to say this, but they have that it factor for me right now. When I look at Diesel and what is required to be elite, I'd even use that word. I don't think they're elite yet. That's what they have to prove. But Mark Johnson has put together a team that has the components that could potentially be elite and maybe be elite for a while, especially picking up BJ. I was real hot on BJ in the offseason. I kind of think it's kind of cool. Now, I talked to BJ, it's a longer story, but hopefully get him on the show. He doesn't like to do media. But I think it's kind of cool that he ended up staying in Texas and playing with AC Diesel, because if they do win a tournament, I think that'll be a special moment for him and for the team. But Jesus Christ, dude, they have threats across the field. Clint Johnson is also, and I wouldn't say an undercover beast, but he's ridiculous too. The team is definitely just laden with a lot of guys that are also need to prove themselves. Like I was talking about the guys that you have, but are also very, very talented paintball players and it's pretty seasoned at this point too. He doesn't have a lot of boot rookies on that team. So I'm looking for Diesel to make big waves in 2021. The last team I'm going to throw at you, we got to probably have you on the show before we get to the whole season, though, because I kind of want to go down the whole. I could keep you here for another hour going through every single one of these teams. But since it's our boy and fellow, coaching legend, old school legendary player from back in the day, but Houston Heat. You have also you've coached San Diego Dynasty. You know how hard it is to work with an all-star team. Todd Martinez is now going to coach Houston Heat. Houston Heat coming off of 2 disappointing finishes in 2020, but a team that won the World Cup 2 years before that in a row, and a team that obviously is just chock full of what you need in order to win paintball tournaments. But I want your thoughts on that move and on Houston Heat. That'll be the last team I ask you about before we sign off.
I mean, there's not enough words to be said about Todd. I mean, listen, wasn't he coaching with Infamous when they won an event? Mouse was there too, so we can put some of that here or there. Vicious never got a win, but you talk about a college level team that got deep into the pro division. There's Todd's, and again, Greg Pauly too. I'm not saying there wasn't other coaches involved, but when you look at Todd's track record, the Ironman, for instance, right? Like I've never, and I'm not saying this to be rude, I don't fear the Ironman. They're a great team and they're capable of beating anybody on any given Sunday. And so they proved in Las Vegas. If Vegas had a line on that one, it would have been a massive underdog bet to bet they won that event. But there's one common denominator about a lot of these teams that have won, and it's Todd Martinez. And, you know, like, listen, Todd's my friend. Without Todd, Mike Himman does not sit where he's at today. And there's a mutual love that he and I have for each other and respect that we have for each other. But if we're just talking about the analytics and the X's and O's of paintball, Todd Martinez, the fact that there wasn't 18 other teams calling him to get him to coach their team leaves me a bit baffled and befuddled, because the guy 100%, and he can recruit, right? Like there's an issue for all teams is recruiting. Like when I say I wasn't calling people, like I really wasn't calling people, right? Like if you want to play paintball for me, I'm going to return your call. I want to hear from you. But recruiting is a big part of this sport, you know? Like hearing Tim or Joe and these guys, when they had a chance to come play for me, for whatever that's worth, they want to come play for these, myself, Rusty, him. Like there's a handful of coaches, you know, Rich Telford should always be mentioned, Joey Blute. Like there's a lot of great coaches out there. And man, I just don't know how somebody doesn't put Todd. Like if we have a Hall of Fame for this, if he's not a first-year inductee, first-year ballot guy, whoever's voting's fucking retarded. Like Todd, when you see Todd, you know, we're at Camp Pendleton together, and you hear him out there yelling at his guys about communication. And you know, when Alan was on the team or this guy, he's out there just giving him an earful. I mean, probably louder than I would be. And I was like, man, Todd's going in on him. You know what I mean? That's me saying it. But the reality is Todd knows what he's talking about. Like Todd knows how to build champions. So how is Houston Heat? And again, what did Houston get? A 9th and a 10th last year? I think was 8th and 10th, 9th and 10th. Was their 2 events they had last year. They clearly needed something, right? And Todd is the guy. I mean, now the question Sarge will have, Randy will have, is how much he wants to hand off to Todd and let Todd do it. Because I'll tell you right now, there's other guys out there that left other big pro teams and went to other big pro teams and won World Cups that Todd had an accent, like guys like Rainey don't act like he was. And you know, he had talked to the Ironmen, and I think some people over there at Dieville waffled a little bit on that decision. And if they had listened to Todd, there's more talent in that camp if they had listened to Todd. That's just as simple as that. And it's so tough because, you know, guys like you and I, Matty, like know so many inside details of this game that we don't want to go spilling out. But like, if Sarge so chooses to hand that team to Todd and say, mold this roster into what I want, Houston Heat keeps winning. And Houston Heat's won a lot of events. They're a great team. Listen, I like Sarge. I like all the guys. I think every guy on that team and I are friends on some level. But that team will evolve past Brett Favre into Aaron Rodgers if they listen to what Todd has to say. Because I cannot imagine in a million years Todd steering them in the wrong direction. Like if we're talking bets, Houston Heat's betting odds went way up the second Todd showed up there. You know it and I know it. Like, again, that's our bro, but like that guy is on a different level. And again, like us, right? He's been doing this for so long. It's just secondhand nature to him. But the things, like I met up with him. He made some shirts for me recently. And I met up with him in Escondido, and we're just chopping it up in a parking lot. And just, his mindset going into it. I was talking to all the guys on the team, just calling everybody, touching base with them. And like, even for me as a coach, I'm listening to what Todd's saying. Like, man, I need to do that shit. You know what I mean? Like, there's still something to be learned. Myself,
for sure.
I go into the pits or I'm at these events and I watch how all these coaches do what they do. And I try to steal a little something from them, right? Because there's something great that they do. And Todd is coaching
stolen reps. You were just talking about it.
Yep.
You were just talking about it.
I mean,
stolen
Todd
reps.
and Houston Heat will be a great team. I mean, the question will be is, does anybody have to go on that roster, right? And obviously that wouldn't happen this year, but no different than John Gruden coming into the Raiders. Is Derek Carr the quarterback of the future? Only he knows that, right? Maybe him and his GM. And that'll be Sarge and Todd. And, Sarge is super loyal to his guys. So is Bart, the top level owners we have in the league. You can't say enough good things about. You know what I mean? Like, we may be competitors and there may be industry issues off the table, but like either one of those two dudes, I'm glad to shake their hand and call them a friend at some level because they're just good dudes. So at what point can Sarge step back and hand that to Todd and trust that Todd will 100% deliver for the heated up nation? If they do that, like, and it's formidable for a long time to come. I mean, Yaya and Ronnie have been out here a bunch practicing. And let's be real, those guys have to know that while Todd's a great dude, a funny ass dude to talk to, and a great dude to be around, like, there's a new warden in town, boys. And like, if you don't step up, and I'm not just saying those two guys, everybody on that team should be out playing a lot of paintball, honing their skill set, because Todd ain't got no time for the BS. That might have worked when Randy was coaching because he loves you guys. Todd's about numbers, and Todd will deliver. Like, I hope I don't catch him. That's, he's smart. You're not going to pull some shit on Todd. You're not going to, run up.
I agree.
And have some crazy play.
Yeah. I mean, look, we got, it's like, this is the time of, hey, well, I'm biased for this, I'm biased for that. Like, I'm biased to Todd Martinez because I've seen, I grew up with Todd. I saw him come up as a kid. I'm biased to Mike Himman. I saw you come up as a kid. I've seen your whole career. So I've seen the best, and that's what I'm expecting out of you guys. And I absolutely definitely know that I really feel Todd can take Houston Heat and make it even a better team than they already are, just on all those things you just said. And because, you are a fool if you're looking at pro paintball and not thinking that scouting and the behind the scenes moving and shaking is part of putting teams together and dealing with players. And that's just moving forward. That is just, thus it was written, thus it shall be. That is gospel. So I totally agree with that. Mike Hinman, thank you so much for sitting down with me, man. I really appreciate it. I feel like we could probably, just talk for another 5 hours if we need to. Probably need to have you on again before the start of the season. But hey, dude, San Diego Aftermath, I can't wait to see what you and the boys are going to bring this year. APX, I know you're working your ass off over there. WCPPL, you're running some great events too. You're just a paintball guy, and I respect that. So thank you so much for sitting down with me. Anyone you want to thank? Any last thoughts?
Oh, my family, my kids, my wife, everybody that supported me, all my friends out there. I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years. There's too many names to name, so I'm just thankful. I don't think Aftermath has any fans. We just got a lot of friends, and I'm thankful to everybody out there that's, said a good word about me, the crew, anybody that's ever played for us, anything like that. Just happy to be here, man. I mean, paintball's fun, right? It's the one common that no matter where all of our lives out there go in all the million different directions, the ups, the downs, the triumph and tragedy, it's the one consistent that all of us have to always come back to is paintball. It's just a part of all of our lives, and I'm super stoked to be here and super happy to be here and blessed to be here and a million other words. And hopefully, I got another 25 years of doing it, because I don't think they'll zip my body bag up off the field. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I'll ever walk away from this game, and my son's out playing now, so I'm pretty stoked about that. So yeah, that's about all I got.
Well, we're blessed to have you back. Thank you so much for sitting in. We got Oliver Lane coming on the show next Monday, and we definitely have to have Mike back on before the season starts. So mark your calendars. It's starting to begin. The 2021 season we're almost there, but I can't wait for it. It's going to be a fun show to watch. I'm Matty Marshall. Mike, thank you so much. I'll see you guys next week with Oliver Lane.
Later, guys.
The first National X-Ball League divisional event of 2021 is just on the horizon. Don't miss the NXL Lone Star Amateur Open, going down Friday, March 19th to Sunday, March 21st at Giant Party Sports Paintball and Airsoft Park, just north of Dallas, Texas. Gunfights will rage across 2 different formats, 5-man and X-Ball, with 3 different levels of competition in each format. Make sure to register your team by Wednesday, March 10th, which is the final day to get your squad signed up for the battle. Also, tune in to watch all the action going down on center court, only on GoSports.com.